Welcome to Kinship Cafe. I am your host, Jim Jones, and today we are joined with Dave Booda.
Hello, Jim. It's nice to be here.
Hey, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
My pleasure.
And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic that's kind of in the air as far as kind of shifting demographics or thinking about relationships, and that's the idea of open relationships.
Sure, let's talk about it.
Yay.
Yeah.
Just before we jump into that, would you like to open us up with a song?
Sure, I'd love to.
Right on.
We've been lovers for a long time, since 92. It's me and you. I've been thinking about the good times that we both had. Ain't been bad. We've been together right from the start. You've always been the language of my heart. We went steady back in high school, when I saw how they looked at you. I'll admit that I was humble. How's a guy like me with a girl like you? I knew right then that we would never part. You've always been the language of my heart. And I hope that you remember the way we used to be. We'll sing our song together in harmony. The two of us are growing older, and the best is yet to come. I'm so grateful for the music, and that we're still having fun. Art is my love, so love is my art. You'll always be the language of my heart.
Wow, Dave, I really like that song.
Thanks, Jim.
Is this an original?
Yeah, that's an original. That one's called Language of My Heart, and I wrote that about my relationship with music, which started, I mean, I suppose you could say started when I was born, but really started when I was about 9 or 10. Started playing guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
I realized, I started playing piano when I was like 5 or 6. So maybe relationship with my guitar music in the context of guitar.
Oh.
That's more accurate.
So
Accuracy is important. I think
guitar's got your heart, not necessarily the piano.
Yeah, it's really the relationship with music, but the way that the guitar has allowed me to express that, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
So, speaking of relationships, you have done, I've seen a number of these, what you've been calling intimacy workshops.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could tell me a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so, I tell people kind of my day job is music. I play 4 or 5 nights a week, and one of the other things I'm interested in is relationships. And I don't even know how I got into it. It almost seems weird to be, I've done shows occasionally where I will. I did this in Colorado once. I did a a combination of like I talked about relationships and played songs, and I always think it's like it's a bit weird because if I heard somebody that was going to do that, I would think, oh, they're probably either not very good at both, or like, or just like good at one and not good at the other, you know. And so, I mean, that's up to other people to decide, of course. But relationships and work on intimacy is something I've been doing for a while, and it's for some strange reason been something that I feel kind of good at, or at least something that people come to me and want help with. And I don't know if that relates to music. It's just kind of a totally different thing that I end up doing. But you know, I guess that I was going to. I don't even know how I got into it, to be honest. I mean, I like gatherings where you really like. To me, the most simple definition for intimacy is closeness. And I just think that is, we all want closeness. We don't want to be close with everybody, but we want to be close with people that we want to feel close to.
Right.
And I think we're really missing that. Almost everybody feels a sense of missing that in their life and doesn't really know how to get it, or doesn't know what the systems are at play that would have them not get that. And so that's the nature of the intimacy workshops, I think, are one, to bring people together and have them experience that, but two, to also help them come away understanding what it is about their life that maybe is not creating that, or maybe give them some tools to create that, to have deeper relationships with the people in their life already.
So do they come to this seminar as a couple, or do they just plan on, or do you help people to be intimate with whoever happens to be there?
Yeah, it's not necessarily couples, but couples can come. That's great if they do. It's just about relating skills that you could use with anybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah, or the opportunity to relate with anybody. And sometimes couples come and they do the exercises with themselves. Sometimes they come and then they mix themselves about the room. Most of the workshops I lead are not sexual in nature, so you could be totally monogamous and be relating to other people in a close, intimate way without breaking monogamous agreements and that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I do.
Very cool. Yeah, I've heard also the thing going around, the cuddle parties. Are you familiar with those?
Yep. Yeah, actually, a friend of mine started that back in 2004.
Really?
A guy named Reed Mahalko, who's a sex educator.
Okay.
I didn't know him back then, but I've since become good friends with him. And yeah, him and his partner Marcia, they started that, and it's become a whole thing. It started in New York. It was certainly making a lot of news when it started, because everybody loves, oh my God, adults are getting together and touching each other consensually. That's so weird, and let's talk about it here, But yeah, cuddle parties are great. If I had $1 for every person that came to a workshop I did and that had something to do with touch, and that came away feeling like, oh boy, do I need more touch in my life. It's just like all the time. Yeah. And I think that regardless if you feel like you're a touchy person or not, that's just a very nourishing thing that we all really appreciate. So
yeah, well, Kinship Cafe we try to focus on issues of well-being, and certainly the idea of attachment, of having that intimacy, of feeling that touch, are all going to be vital to having that sense of well-being. So, yeah, I like that, with life and well-being. That's important. What else is there, really? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So the other part that comes up sometimes when we're hearing about Dave is about the open. This is good. I'm getting to know what do people hear about when they hear about Dave Booda. I'm curious. What are the rumors going around or something? Yeah. Well, certainly, definitely the intimacy, and also a little bit of this maybe promotion of this idea of open relationships. Sure. And so, why don't you share a little bit about what's going on here? Let's see. So I would say that I use this metaphor with music, actually, so this is nice. It's like a little tie-in to music.
So I would describe my relationship life as very similar to my music life in terms of relationships. So, for example, I have a band. The guys in my band, I have Rashad playing drums, Kevin plays bass, Josh plays keys. Sometimes Steve steps in and plays bass. Sometimes I play with a girl named Rhythm who plays drums. Then there's also sometimes Adam and I gig together. I have like a lot of different musicians that I play with, but I play with a few people more consistently than I play with others. And there isn't anything in the music world that says if I play and I do a tour with one group of guys or band or girls or whoever, and then a week later I go play a show with some random violinist, that's a problem. There's nothing morally wrong with that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, if I skipped out on a show to play with somebody else, like that's not cool. And as we know, being in the music world, like there is band drama. Like musicians have feelings about, hey man, why don't you call me for that gig? Like what happened? Why aren't and there's trouble in communicating and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So that is the moral framework for my love life. That's how I hold it. That's what open relationships mean to me. Now, of course, there's a way to do that is not compassionate and not kind to other people.
Right.
So there's a lot of best practices in how do you actually do that to make everybody feel good, and that's a whole other bag of whatever. But I think the metaphor of the music is a good one because we typically don't really have a framework for what anything but monogamy looks like. And people think, well, okay, you're in an open relationship. That means you just are not committed. Let's say, because like for example, I was married for 4 years, and we were in an open marriage.
Okay.
And it was funny because when people knew we were together, but they didn't know we were married in an open relationship, they're like, oh, okay, sure. You're in an open relationship, I get it. But then they found out we were married, and all of a sudden it was like, well, you're married and in an open relationship? It's like, what? That's so, and they just couldn't, there's something about open relationships that people don't think are serious.
Yeah.
Or they think, oh, you're in an open relationship, that means you're just like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. That's the first month of dating with people. No, not necessarily, right?
Right.
And actually, it takes a stronger bond to be able to do open relationships well because there's more pressure on the relationship, or there's more things, there's more dynamics. It's harder in a lot of ways. So in the metaphor with music, it's like I have people that I am with consistently sometimes because that serves a purpose. Because if I played with a different musician every night, as fun as that might be to have newness, I also want people who know me, who get my groove, who I don't have to explain so many things to all the time. I want to just like come home and be like, okay, they get it. They know what beat I want or whatever.
Yeah.
To use more metaphors. And so that's I guess how I look at my relationship life.
So the concern that, like you said, people saying, how can you do this like in a marriage or something like that?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions, I imagine, that come up for people. You said earlier that there's kind of this whole other bag, but I think that's probably part of the area that people will be curious about in terms of
Sure.
how is a relationship structured in such a way that it doesn't become hurtful, or that you're not creating some kind of drama out of that context?
Well, the first step is to do open relationships with other people who want to do open relationships.
Well, yeah.
Most people miss that part.
That's probably a big part.
It's very difficult to do open relationships with someone who does not want to do that. In the same way that a band that someone wants to play rock and roll and the other person wants to play classical music and have sheet music, and you want to improv, and like, I don't know, they're just probably going to get frustrated after a while that you don't have sheet music, and you should just go find somebody else who wants to play rock and roll. And not to say that rock and roll is like exciting and classical music is boring. I don't mean to say that monogamy is boring and exciting, whatever. But so that's the biggest thing. And then also being in community. A lot of people I see try to open their relationships in some kind of vacuum, and they just do it on their own, and they don't have other examples of healthy open relationships. They don't know anybody in open relationships. They just try to convert people off the street and say, "Hey, Jim, you want to be a third in our relationship?" And you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, or I don't know. And so so that's a difficult thing to do if you're not actually with other people. In the same way that again, to use the music metaphor, if you want to play electric guitar and get a lot of crunchy pedals and that kind of stuff, but you're surrounded by people who want to play classical music and want to play each note the way it's written, like you're gonna think you're crazy, and you're not gonna. It's not gonna be all that successful. And so,
well, this is fascinating. This idea, I never would have guessed that there would be. I guess I just never really thought about it. Open relationship communities.
Definitely, yeah, there are definitely open relationship communities.
Yeah. So, when you meet somebody, do you already? I mean, is it already in that community, or do you ever have to explain to somebody what's going on?
Tonight I'm going on a date with a girl who I met in the community because, she's in a relationship with, there's a married couple, and she dates the husband, and they've been together for 3 or 4 years, and she lives with them. Actually, the three of them live together, and we're going on a date. So I've known her for a few months, maybe 6 months or so, and that's great because I know that she's into open relationships because she's in one. So
I don't have to explain.
I don't have to explain anything.
Yeah.
And I don't have to. And then, the people that she's dating, I trust that that this works for them because they're not. This isn't some surprise. They get open relationships, and they can also trust me because I'm in open relationships. They don't trust that I'm not trying to create some exclusive connection with her.
Yeah.
I'm wanting to spend time with her, but I'm not trying to do it I'm not trying to exclude them by doing what I want to do.
Gotcha.
So that's different.
So for people who are wondering about I guess for lack of a better term, the morality of it, do you come across this, or how do you answer those questions?
Sure. Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, we're in a church. I mean, come on, I'm talking about relationships. Morality. I mean, we're in this big subject. We have to really unpack morality now. People just generally don't understand open relationships, and they may have seen examples of open relationships being done in ways that aren't kind. And I'm not here to say that everybody doing open relationships is doing a fantastic, kind, empathetic job.
Sure.
They're not.
Right.
In the same way that plenty of people doing monogamy are not. It's not. But, the morality to me is about transparency and honesty and kindness. And so, if people dug into my relationship life and learned about it, that they would see that there's those values at play, and the relationship structure. I don't think anybody's ever had any moral problems with structure. It makes them uncomfortable, and that's fine. And we sometimes conflate I'm uncomfortable with that's wrong.
Right.
But that's just because
we see
we're
that.
we don't we grow up in a town of all white people and see a black person, I'm uncomfortable. I'm all of a sudden have morals or something, or we're racist or whatever. I mean, it's we're not around and exposed to things, we feel uncomfortable with it, and we can't deal with our discomfort. We can't just be vulnerable and say I'm uncomfortable. We have to make it about other people or moralize or whatever.
Yeah.
But like I said, that those are the values for me. Here's a good example of like a moral quandary. Let's say,
Yeah.
In monogamy land, let's say you go on a date, first date. Let's say we're on our first date. You ask me, "Hey, how was your weekend?" And I say, I just let's say it's a Sunday or something, and I say, "How was your weekend?" And I tell you how my weekend actually was, which the weekend was on Saturday night. I met this beautiful woman. We went out dancing, and then went back to my place and had like just some amazing sex and the breakfast the next morning, and like was just so beautiful. Like because if you were just my friend randomly, I would just say that because that's what's true, right? How was your weekend? Well, that's how my weekend was. But on a first date, and that person asks me how my weekend, I might just be like, oh, it was great. I like went out with some friends on Saturday night and like had some fun and went dancing. How was your weekend? Because it would be weird to share about sexual experiences with other people, even on a first date with someone. Like your relationship with them didn't even really exist before this moment, and yet
Right.
sharing about someone else is strange.
Yeah.
And so what does that say in terms of a value set? Well, the values of the person who just shares honestly is they're being transparent, they're not hiding anything. And the values of someone who just sort of says, I went out with some friends and went dancing, is not being honest, not being transparent. No, they're also being kind because they probably understand that person might have a bad reaction to that. So I'm not saying it's always a good idea to share that stuff, but it's interesting to consider why that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not lying, you're not cheating. Like, why is it uncomfortable for you to say that? I mean, I put that question to you. Like, what do you think? Why do you think it's uncomfortable?
Well, I think not having existed in an open relationship world, I'm going to have to relate it back to, let's say, a serial monogamy situation,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where maybe before I was married, dating somebody and then dating somebody else. There's maybe a time where you were developing that relationship to have a certain amount of openness that's based on trust. That before that trust is there, which kind of takes some time, it's not necessarily wrong to not reveal everything, because that transparency comes with this relationship of trust. So I wouldn't necessarily think that that's a wrong thing to do, but I think that the part of the reason it becomes challenging to trust somebody with that is, I mean, it's hard for me to think in terms of the concept of the open relationship, but within like the world that I've come out of, the relationship that's pending, is looking about to develop that intimacy, to develop that connection that might feel threatened, I guess you could say, by the fact that the day before you were in that kind of a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe it's not even threatened in the sense of like inadequacy or something like that, but maybe in the sense of, well, why are you trying to have a relationship with me when clearly you're already in relationship?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good example. Yeah, that's true, right? Yeah, so I agree. I guess I look at it as like there's a lot of like assumptions that come with monogamy, as in like we wouldn't be attracted to other people, and but no, I appreciate that answer actually.
Well,
so
and
I
I
hadn't thought about too much about what a good response would be. I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of like that.
Glad I passed the test.
But yeah, so yeah, I guess this is an example of morals at play that, since you asked about morality, but.
Yeah, well, I was thinking more about like how it's viewed maybe from like the outside, which is always going to be tough because they're not going to necessarily understand or want to understand. It's like the whole challenge that comes up all the time with homosexuality, and how that is under fire. So, it's not going to be realistic for somebody who's anti-open relationships to necessarily be okay with it. It takes somebody who's at a point where there's enough of an openness to be okay with diversity of ways that people do relationships. So, yeah, the morality thing is a tough one from outside, but from inside, I guess it would be more the question of when you are in these differing relationships, how do you understand your obligations and expectations with each other? But I imagine this is something that has to be kind of
Talked about. Yeah, for sure.
Navigated, negotiated, all that kind of stuff. So have you ever had like a completely awkward situation of trying to explain to somebody about what you're doing to see if they're interested in that went really horribly wrong?
Well, I definitely try to vet people, and I try to not get involved with people that's not a good fit for. I can't say I've had that happen where it's gone horribly wrong. I mean, I thought when I told my parents that my previous partner and I were polyamorous, that was the term I used at the time. That didn't go well.
How did they respond?
I probably could have rolled it out better, because the truth is, like, there's a term monogamish. It kind of is like better, I think, in a lot of ways, because
that's funny.
98% of the time we're together as a couple doing normal couple stuff, and we're not closed to other interactions or relationships. And the truth is, a lot of the times we were playing with other people together, maybe in like a play party or a threesome or something. So it wasn't like we were out having like these deeply committed long-term relationships with other people.
Gotcha.
And not that that's not okay. That's, some people do that. That's great. It just didn't happen to be what we were doing. But I wanted my parents to know that we weren't monogamous. And I think I was also really, like, at the time, really feeling like I wanted to share this, And the only time when that really bumps up against, like, ooh, we should share this, is like when there's another person in my life that I want them to meet, and I want them to know that that's a significant person in my life. It's not just a friend.
Gotcha.
And that's like, so we're not monogamous, and this is the other person, and they're important to me, and we love each other, and blah blah blah. So, but yeah, that was probably pretty awkward. I don't know, my parents knew what to think, rightly so, because I just sort of dropped that term on them. I was like, we're polyamorous. Okay, bye. I don't know. It was tough. But I've learned to roll things out more slowly.
Yeah. Have they come around to being accepting of that?
Well, I have not been in a primary relationship for about 3 years. So, although my mindset hasn't changed, and I still consider myself polyamorous or someone who practices open relationships, it doesn't really make sense at this point. Like, they wouldn't understand
Gotcha.
What that means to have that mindset, but it's harder to understand when the structure's not there.
Yeah.
Right now the structure just looks like I'm single.
Right.
Which I am, and there's more.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting to try and explain that to parents, especially because generationally there tends to be more of a disconnect sometimes with some of the newer ways that people are choosing to. And it's not new.
Sure.
It's been around, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, monogamy is new. I mean, really, if you want to really get historical on it, of course.
If we want to get historical, yeah. So, very interesting. I want to take a little break and do another song.
All right, let's do it.
Okay.
I've been wandering coast to coast. I've been sleeping under the stars, trying to make the most. Just a few possessions I carry on my back. And I'm in love with the simple things nothing that I lack. And I need one good reason, oh, to let it go. And I need one good feeling, yeah, to let you know. Oh, what I do, too much thinking from my point of view. I got too many t-shirts that I know I'll never use. I got too much baggage, so babe, you know it's true. I can have too much of anything, but I still can't get enough of you. Can't get enough of you. I need one good reason, oh, to let it go. And I need one good feeling, yeah, to let you know. Alright, yeah, well I do too much thinking from my point of view. I got too many t-shirts I know I'll never use. I got too much baggage, so babe, you know it's true. I can have too much of anything, but I still can't get enough of you. I can't get enough of you. But sometimes we need our separation. It's one of those human complications. But I do too much thinking from my point of view. I got too many sneakers, man, I know I'll never use them. I got too much baggage, so babe, you know it's true that I can have too much of anything, but I can't get enough of you. I can't get enough of you. Can't get enough of you. I can't get enough of you.
Dave, another fascinating song. It's a little more upbeat this time.
Yes, a little more upbeat.
What is this?
That's called a minimalist love song because I'm a minimalist.
Nice.
And so I just thought it would be cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and a little bit of your background, you're actually in an intentional community.
Yes.
And you have fairly minimal quarters there.
I do.
So you're definitely...
I live in a tiny house.
Yeah,
which is
you're
pretty cool
practicing
for
it.
some people. They love tiny houses.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. I actually have more room than I need in my tiny house. I have there's some closets and drawers that are pretty empty. So
That's great.
yeah.
I keep having aspirations to
You and everybody else. I always hear about this. Every time it's hard. It's hard being a minimalist because of the shame that I seem to impart on the people just by being who I am. They're always like, I walk in their house and like, oh, I was trying to get rid of all this. Like, oh my God, I know. I'm like, I don't care. If you want me to help you get rid of stuff, I like doing that. But you
Nice.
do you, like it's all good.
So you're going to come help me get everything out of my garage?
Traveling with people is really tough too.
Oh.
It's like traveling, like I can do sort of indefinite world travel in a backpack about this big, and it's great. And I'm in the middle of writing a book called The Art of Packing Light because I love this topic. But it's so hard to not rub that in the faces of people when you travel because they're like lugging these huge suitcases and you're just like you know. I don't check bags. I don't even like now the airlines like Spirit and Frontier and some other ones in Europe are doing this thing where they charge for carry-ons, but they don't charge for personal items, which is this tiny little thing. Purse. My backpack that I could do indefinite world travel in fits in the personal item bin. I don't have to pay a carry-on fee for that.
Nice.
I mean, so it's silly how little stuff I'm bringing, but it's all very intentional. And then, you know, when we're on the trip, people say like, oh, I need one of these things. I'm like, oh, I have that. I have this. Like, I actually, you know, I've thought extensively about the things I bring.
Yeah.
And I don't bring things I don't need. And there's a lot more to that, but it's hard to not have people feel bad, is what I'm trying to say. Not that I mind them feeling that a little bit, but I don't want it to be like they're all like, oh, well, I'm so terrible. Like, forgive me. Oh, I am a hoarder.
That's funny.
Whatever, you know.
So coming back to the relationship thing, I had kind of an interesting thought about that too, because when we were talking about your intimacy workshops, intimacy, the ability to have intimacy with other people doesn't have to involve a sexual relationship. And so even in more kind of like monogamous, in terms of sexuality relationships, in some sense you may have lots of other people or some other people that you feel very intimate with, even though you keep it at that level. Mm-hmm. And so that might be a way that people could, think about that too.
Yeah, so I think what it is that we don't really understand intimacy. At least I didn't for many years. I grew up in a family where anything difficult was kind of swept under the rug in terms of conversations, anything that might be vulnerable. It's just like, we don't want to talk about that. Let's keep it like, everything looks good, right? Everything's good. We're good. Okay, good. And so no messiness. And I mean, it sounds kind of obvious now, but I realized it maybe 8 or 9 years ago that saying the things you don't want to say and sharing the things that you don't want to share has a really positive effect.
Yeah.
Of course, that statement could be used to abuse people and do horrible stuff, but like in general, like sharing things I'm insecure about or things that I might consider vulnerable and letting people in. Like I look at it as, it's like when I'm writing in my journal, I'm completely honest. And if I can let people into that experience, when it's appropriate and when I feel safe and all that,
right,
they're going to feel closer to me. And it's going to be maybe kind of hard in the moment because I don't want to share that stuff. But that ultimately is going to create closer relationships, and that's going to feel good.
Yeah. So with the intimacy, do you think that the first step in developing that is learning how to create a safe context?
I think so, yeah.
And in your workshops, do you get into how you might go about doing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think letting people go at their own pace. I mean, and
I would guess that most people who are uncomfortable with sharing something that's a little bit more on the vulnerable side is they're concerned about how that could potentially be used against them, or about judgments that are happening or criticisms. And so if you're wanting to begin to have a greater sense of intimacy with somebody, it would seem like you would want to begin with, how do we cultivate a context in which...
Yeah, okay, so this is how I've seen this happen in my life, which it's usually that if you don't feel that safety with the current group, or you're operating at the level you feel like, what might happen is, let's say you go to a workshop or you meet some new friends who are more open, and they're opening to you in a way that has you go like, oh, like they seem cool talking about their sex life, and okay, maybe I'll share that too. And then you find like, oh, this feels good. I'm telling them things that I wouldn't normally tell people, and then they're not judging me for that. And then you might return to your other friend group and maybe play around trying to be a little more open and noticing that maybe they do judge you for that, and then you might be like, okay, I feel like this isn't me, this is their judgments, because I have experiences with people who don't judge me for this and actually get that this is not a problem. And maybe you don't share around those people. And I think a lot of times what happens with this work around intimacy and closeness is you're shifting your values about how you want to live and the group of people you want to be around. So you end up attracting a different group of people who want to share at that depth and are not judgmental about certain things. And so, yeah, I think in a way, like there isn't really a way to create safety. I think you do end up sharing with different people. But for me at this point, like, for example, I have so many people in my life who I can share very fully with, that on the rare occasion I do get judged, or am in a situation where what I'm sharing is being used against me. I just kind of go like, wow, that's not me. That's sad. I'm sorry that's the way that's occurring for you, and I don't feel ashamed of who I am because I have a community of people.
You've got that
who
support
are like
group.
really celebrating me, and so I really see it as an anomaly. And the problem is sometimes when that's the opposite, when being seen and supported is an anomaly, and then the rest of their life is just like beat down judgment kind of stuff. And those people need to find new friends, not necessarily cut those people out that are already friends, but they need to supplement their life with people who are not judging them, or who are wanting them to be more of who they want to be.
Yeah.
That's incredibly important.
Well, and I think that maybe one of the things that could happen is if you do get connections where you can get that support, then maybe you can be operating from a little bit more of a position of strength for those other relationships, because maybe they're not relationships you can walk away from, right? There's some that are important in your life.
For sure.
And so then maybe that could be a place to work from, to start to work on creating more of that safe place.
Yeah, you need a home base. You need people. You need a core group of people that get you for all the things you are. And I'll even use the example of I think there's a way that you and your sexuality typically is something that maybe is hard to find a real place of, like, oh, okay, like I feel like this group of people just gets me. That's difficult. And having that is like a massive building block, I feel like, for life. I know for me that's true. And not everybody in my life is totally 100% on board with my sexual expression, and that's okay. But I don't need them to be nice, but I don't, I just find it amusing at this point.
Yeah.
If they don't, because it doesn't push any like shame buttons in me.
Well, I think for a lot of folks in our culture, because, sexuality of any kind has been such a taboo topic, I think that most people maybe are not sharing a lot about who they are at a core level, because it's just not socially acceptable. And there's probably a lot of healing across the board that could happen if we had more of a context for people to be able to be more open about those things.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, very interesting, Dave. This has been a very fun conversation.
I'm glad. It's been nice to be here, Jim. I've enjoyed connecting with you. I've really appreciated how you support local music and local musicians. And like, it's just if we had thousands of people like you, this would be even more wonderful to play locally here. Like, it's really a pleasure. So thanks.
Well, thank you so much, Dave, and definitely appreciate your music and the thing that you've also been doing, pulling together musicians and doing regular shows. And it's just we live in a place where there's just so many amazing musicians. It's just such a joy to be a part of it.
Trying to represent North County up here.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, would you like to close us out with a final song?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
and grace. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Yes, I once was lost, oh, but now I'm found. Was blind, oh, but now I see. And what did you think? Yeah, you know it was part of the plan. I can't be everything, but I'm doing the best that I can. So breathe in, look in my eyes, I see the best part of you. And it's not your fault. Oh, I'm sorry you felt so alone. You know it's hard sometimes. We're all a little far from our home. So breathe out, let go your fears and hear my voice. Stay beautiful, stay wild, live like a queen, dance like a child, stay in the moment, stay free, stay beautiful. If you can't stay with me, and I can't believe we went down this road again and again and again. I just can't get used to it, babe. I'll always know you more than a friend. So breathe in and look in my eyes, I see the lover in you. And stay beautiful, stay wild, live like a queen, dance like a child, stay in the moment, stay free. Yeah, stay beautiful. If you can't stay with me, oh, let them say you should fit in. Oh, all they do is talk, baby, thickens that beautiful skin. Honey, don't change. Don't be afraid to see things your way. You've got it made. If you stay beautiful, stay wild, live like a queen, dance like a child, stay in the moment, stay free, oh, stay beautiful, 'cause you'll always be beautiful if you can't stay with me.
like that, Dave.
Thank you.
What is this one called?
That one's called Stay Beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what was the context around this one?
Well, it's a song I wrote back in 2011. It's kind of it's been a journey of different iterations, I think, but it was a relationship I was in that ended, and that was the sentiment I was left with. I wrote that. So I was playing at the Tiki in PB. I don't know if you remember that. It was like an old dive bar in Pacific Beach. And I was playing there every Tuesday, and then I was dating this girl who lived in Mission Beach. And I played from like 10 to 1. So I was cleaning up my stuff, and I was like walking out the door to my car, and I see her walking across the street, and we had kind of broken up and hadn't talked in like a month or two. And I was like, I think she was needing some space. I was just sort of waiting for her to reconnect. When I saw her, I was like, oh, hey. And then I saw her see me and just turn away and like, and go the other way. And I was just like, ugh, like it hit me, And so that's why I went home and wrote that song. It was like 2 or 3 in the morning or something. And it's just like, I get it. Like if you can't stay with me, like you have to do what's best for you.
Yeah,
and this is how I feel,
Beautiful song.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping we can have you back again sometime, because I sense there's probably a lot of topics we could dive into that'd be a lot of fun.
Certainly, yes. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, yeah.
All right, Dave. Well, thank you again so much for being on the show.
Thanks, Jim.
All right. Be well, everybody.